uh, the Tesla Semi is an emotional purchase decision based on several reasons, and customers buying Cummins products don't operate on emotion. The second thing we cover today is we review Tesla's decision to start building large rental fleets, for example, at Avis, instead of providing repair parts for vehicles. And then the third thing we cover today is kind of where are we on the stock and what are the implications of sort of recent activities by the company. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is the first time on our channel, please take time to like and subscribe. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. Today's talk starts off with a truck emphasis. And so what's kind of going on is the fact that Cummins if the Tesla Semi works and is produced in the manner that Elon Musk has described, it's extremely bad news for competitors in the trucking industry, in particular Cummins Engine Company. And as we've discussed previously, the big problem that shows up is that if you have 4 motors on the wheels of the vehicle, you actually don't need a large engine and the 2,000 parts that go with it. So Cummins is particularly vulnerable because unlike Daimler that has Detroit Diesel or other manufacturers that make money on other parts of the truck, Cummins is really focused its largest portion of revenue on those diesel truck engines. And it's a huge problem to have that business go away in any rapid sequence. So we did some research. Periodically, we like to really focus on what's going on with trucks, what the new information might be. And in this case, I thought it was fascinating that the head of research for Cummins, for the whole company, came across with a statement that he made that suggests that the interest in Cummins or in Daimler's or Tesla's Semi is folks that are operating on emotion and not logic. And I was kind of stunned because the companies that have purchased and put up there are about 3,000 trucks that have been ordered in the early order period. And the companies that have put forward the money for those orders include, very savvy players, including UPS, Walmart, JB Hunt, a lot of companies with a lot of engineers that understand what does and does not work. And so for Cummins to suggest that some of the smartest companies in the world are operating on emotion versus on, bottom line performance was kind of a stunner. The first item that he covered in terms of his emotional analysis of Tesla or the Tesla Semi and moving to electric immediately was the fact that the amount of batteries or the weight of the batteries would consume so much of the haulable weight of the vehicle that the whole concept does not work. So I wanted to highlight what we've discussed previously, which is his analysis when you use the 18650 batteries that are widely available in the marketplace is actually accurate. A truck that's capable of moving 80,000 pounds, in essence, for any reasonable distance, let's say 300 miles, requires a battery pack in 18650 batteries that comes in at, call it 60,000 pounds. So the battery pack is actually in the 40 to 50,000 pound range, but when you add the truck to it, the net of all the weight is about 65,000 pounds, leaving only about 15,000 pounds of freight carrying ability. So his assessment in the case of the 18650 battery is actually quite accurate. The key problem, though, with this, as we all know, is that Tesla's building his own 2170 batteries, and the assessment there is that the 2170 battery produces double the power at half the weight. So the argument made by Elon Musk is that the truck doesn't weigh any more than the current diesel engines do, which means the carryable freight weight is the distance between 35,000 pounds and 80,000 pounds US. And so that's sort of the first part of the argument that was made that I think is kind of crazy and kind of surprising that somebody at that level kind of really seems to not have done their homework. The second problem that was highlighted that he presented, as you see on the list, is he pointed out that the cost of these batteries would be prohibitive. The argument there is that a finished truck is about $130,000 if it's diesel with a Cummins engine in it. And the iteration of trucks with the 18650 battery and 300-mile range, the batteries alone are about $200,000, $225,000, and the remainder of the truck is another, call it $80,000. So the 18650 batteries that are currently on the market, in essence, have a finished truck price of between $300,000 and $400,000. So in this case, again, he's right about it being too expensive when you're competing with a 135K truck, even with reduced cost of repair. The number gap is too wide, and even Walmart wasn't able to successfully produce their own vehicles after doing the research because the price point was too high for the finished product. So I found this really fascinating because once you switch to the 2170 battery, the pricing on the trucks is somewhere between $150,000 and $200,000. And so while this is more expensive than what you might do with a regular diesel truck, the savings really comes in the form of the fact that among many savings is both the repair cost being lower and the difference in fuel economy. The effective fuel economy that's been analyzed is 20 miles per gallon for the electric semi of Tesla, and the effective fuel economy is 6 miles a gallon on average for the diesel trucks. So you can see the numeric difference and the impact of that. So bottom line is the second point made about the high price of the vehicle making it an unreasonable solution is refuted. And if you look at the numbers, Tesla is in a process right now where they're at about 100 and in that $115, $120 per kilowatt hour right now. The industry is about $150 per kilowatt hour in terms of cost. So that cost difference, part of, I think, the delay is just having the batteries available because they're not going to Model 3s. But the other issue was, can you get the cost down to that $100 per kilowatt hour level before you move them into trucks, because it'll make the numbers work better. And the answer to that is, I think it's entirely possible. It's, I think mid to latter part of this year, those numbers will be achieved with the scale that's going on inside the Gigafactory. So bottom line is that when you go through the actual cost numbers, the emotional analysis that Cummins is presenting as to why so many large companies that are well researched are actually choosing to go for the Tesla semi-solution. I just think that it's unfortunate that he's having dialogue in this fashion, but it doesn't fit the facts. And I think the result will be, you just lose more customers in the process. If you look at the Cummins solution, there are a number of partners there that help them to deliver their truck, and it's still at the prototype stage that isn't delivering, and it's a Class 7. So there's a huge problem, and he delineated the problem with electric trucks currently. And if they can't get a solution that includes a 2170 caliber battery, the conclusion that he assessed of non-viability, I think, remains on point. We're deviating a little bit today because of a variety of reasons. And the second sort of point we wanted to jump into today is the economies of scale challenge that Tesla is starting to present. So one of the scenarios for where Tesla goes in the future is that all of a sudden very large companies will be able to come in with new battery technology that allows them to sort of leapfrog Tesla on cost and range, and all of a sudden Tesla's put out of business, and the fact that they have a gigafactory, it becomes kind of an anvil rather than a supportive to success type of thing that it's been thus far. Our assessment of this is that that scenario is possible, but one of the interesting components of how you compete with new folks is that you all of a sudden put a price out there that's arbitrarily low for a comparable product, and all of a sudden consumers will swing to you heavily and starve the new company of sales. In the case of the Chevy Bolt, 248 miles of range, as much as $20,000. If you look at the $40,000 price tag, the $10,000 off, so they're offering that car for $35,000 for 248 miles of range, and people are willing to pay $50,000 to $70,000 for the Model 3 of Tesla, or effectively double the price, and are happily doing so. So there is more to it than simply offering some decent range, etc. Clearly, the supercharger ability of the batteries versus having to wait overnight, as well as the supercharger network, as well as Tesla's infrastructure for electric, really swamps the offerings that have been presented by GM and others over time. And so I think it's fascinating that consumers are willing to step over a $10,000 cheaper product. So one of our fun discussions in our next show will actually review some of the analyses of this type by a gentleman named Bob Lutz formerly of GM. But we're also entering a very interesting phase, which is that there's a concept in business called a loss leader. So basically, if you can sell the product cheap enough, you can sustain it with profits elsewhere, you can in essence take a loss on one product and force somebody out of business, in this case Tesla. As Tesla enters the global market, both Europe and Asia, you now have large companies like Daimler, BMW, and GM that have to compete on all these fronts. So the ability to take losses in one market as a way to come after Tesla starts to disappear as a viable solution, because you now have that global footprint is sort of killing the life out of this loss leader plan, which is one of the ways that smaller startup companies have been destroyed in the past. And it further highlights sort of elements of why there's such a Tesla miracle going on in terms of this circumstance. Sort of the last segment that we're looking at today is sort of reviewing what's going on with Tesla's stock price. As we discussed, when Tesla came out with their production numbers, it was very easy for the large investment firms, et cetera, to extrapolate numbers in terms of what production and profit might be on those cars before other issues are covered, like the tax credits and other things that Tesla makes revenue off of. So I kind of wanted to bring this conversation forward because over the last couple of days, it's the 9th of January 2019 right now. What happened is that we went through a process where the production numbers came out. The numbers are typically assessed as lower, on point, or above what analysts had forecast. And in this case, the number that came in was below analyst forecast for what sales might have been. And there's a number of narratives that were developed off of that, suggesting that Tesla was in sort of a bad situation right now. And our assessment of that after we saw the numbers was that the hedge funds, who are the fastest money guys, would quickly lower the stock price, which is what happened. But you had to wait about 5 days before the large institutional firms would have a chance to fully digest the numbers, get the digestion from the analysts, and then be able to come in with an intelligent decision about what to do with the stock. And so as the market has stabilized recently, the stock price has gone from about 300 to about 345 in 3 days. And I think this trend of bursts of price movement upward will likely continue because Tesla has plenty of cash on hand to meet some of the obligations that are coming in. And by emphasizing the sale of the highest priced models as they enter Europe and Asia, it allows Tesla to further build its cash war chest to not only be profitable, but also, growing profits nicely. So I think the news that's sort of roaming around the stock, can be negative and can be stoked to be negative by folks that control the media from the hedge fund standpoint, et cetera. But at the end of the day, I'd have to argue that this is a situation where I think it's a great opportunity to buy the stock because there are stabilizing entities and forces that are going on that I think support nice growth, if not dramatic growth in the stock price, particularly as battery production keeps increasing and new products like the truck are lined up behind the Model 3 production. The one last item that we're sort of roaming through here is that there was news that came out this week that Tesla has created a large 350 car fleet of rental cars with Avis. And on the surface, this sounded really cool. You now have rental car companies other than Enterprise that have started renting out Teslas, and I think this is a really good point. We believe that one of the things that's going on with that rental fleet is that I think it's a creative way to deal with some of the repair issues in terms of production of parts that Tesla's having. As you all know, there are a number of owners that have been waiting extended periods of time, as long as a year, to get parts to get their car back on the road. And some folks have gotten to the point of just fix it themselves or come up with other methods. But in general, there's been a problem associated with the degree to which Tesla is taking the responsibility of repair seriously. And so that's kind of what's a big discussion. So I think it's a very interesting solution to sell a fleet of vehicles to a service company, and those customers potentially waiting for parts can now rent the equivalent of what they were driving indirectly from Tesla as a way to sort of ease the pain of the wait. I believe that this is a very creative solution because on one hand, Tesla sells more cars, in essence to an outside company, so they keep their production lines going. They also are able to help meet customer needs when there's a discussion of poor quality of customer service when it comes to repairs. So I don't think it's a perfect idea because you prefer for those folks to get the parts they need, fix their car, and be done with it. But I do think this is a creative method for trying to figure out the service challenges and at the same time finding a way to grow the sales of the company. So it'll be interesting to see the accounting friends that are out there who are experts in accounting to assess what your impressions are of this technique of boosting sales kind of through the back door. So kudos to the folks at Tesla that came up with this, and we'll see how that goes. The final sort of coverage item that we've covered previously and that's sort of rolling through is a whole discussion that's going on regarding we have a show coming up, and the show's topic or general topic is the fact that is it possible that the Model 3 success could actually bankrupt Tesla? And what this is about is the fact that there's an interesting element of business called cost accounting. And one of the conversations we were having with one of our viewers was the fact that it's a 3-hour drive to and from the service facility to them by the Tesla technician. So theoretically, that technician may be doing other jobs on his way back to and from the customer site. But an interesting question kind of pops up, which is, while that individual is driving in both directions, they're still being paid on an hourly basis by Tesla. When they arrive, the cost of that repair, even if it's a half hour or whatever it may be, has to be the cost of that person's time plus the parts plus what they did on that job. So that number is a fairly large number, and one of the problems in cost accounting is that is it less costly to simply rent a facility and have the customer bring that product to that facility, or is it better for the service person to have to drive all that distance out there? And the answer to this is, hey, how are you? So I bring this up, bottom line, to the fact that the interesting challenge for Tesla is when you're a small 20,000 vehicles a year company, you can make mistakes and it's okay. But once you become really large, this can become a huge problem. So at any rate, want to thank all of you for joining us. Please remember 20 leg lifts a day. I'm about to do mine. Plant-based diet I know is great. I still like my meat, but learning how to embrace more of that for a healthier plan. Wanted to thank you for joining us once again. Look forward to your comments, inputs, etc. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Tschüss, German, au revoir, French, Lehitrot, Hebrew, Choda Hafez, Farsi, Ni hao ma, Chinese, and in Jamaica we say enough respect, walk good, and thanks for joining us. Have a great day. Bye for now.